Good evening, colleagues. I'd like to welcome members, officers and members of the public watching at home to this Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. This committee plays an important role in the overall governance of the Council. Good governance has many benefits, including helping the Council to make effective decisions, improve performance and be able to respond to risks and opportunities. Can I invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain our proceedings of work this evening?
Thank you. Can I just check those attending remotely can hear us and we can hear them? Debbie Hanson?
I can hear you, thank you.
Thank you. Darren Bowler? Darren, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jessica Hargreaves?
Yes, I can hear you, thank you.
Thank you. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube screen. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you. So item 1 on our agenda for the evening, apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Sean Nolan, on which I'm sure the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed it's not here. And having given due notice, we have Councillor Daniel Wright-Mason, who will substitute for Councillor Nolan this evening. And there are no further apologies, I understand. Brilliant. So moving on to item 2, we've got the minutes from the 4th of September meeting. I'd like to propose that we take those as read and approve them as a true record of the minutes of the meeting held on 4th of September 2024. Can I have a seconder for those, please? Thank you, Councillor Ruth Brown.
I'm happy to second, thank you.
Thanks. And any comments on those minutes from anyone from the committee? I don't see anyone. So can we take those as agreed? Do we have to vote for those? Yeah. No. Okay. Can we go to the vote then, please? Thanks.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Okay, moving on to item 3, notification of other business. We don't have any other business being notified, I believe. And item 4, chair's announcements. So in accordance with the council's policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under chair's announcements on the agenda. And for the purpose of clarification, section 4.8.23 subsection A of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, if you could just be mindful of the business on the agenda and possible leave at an appropriate time in the proceedings if you do need to leave the room. Thanks. Moving on to item 5 then, public participation. We have no public participation this evening. So we can go to item 6, our first substantive item, and that's the SAF's anti-fraud update. And we have Darren Bowler to present, and he's joining us remotely. Thanks.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. Just to confirm, you can hear me. Yes, thank you. So I'm Darren Bowler. I'm a Council Fraud Manager from the Shares Anti-Fraud Service. I'm going to take it that you've all had an opportunity to read and review the SAF's progress report, which is for you to note this evening. SAFs provides a variety of functions for the Council. This update report references that activity between pages 18 and 20 of your bundle, and also on page 20 are the half-year performance outcomes against the KPIs. In respect to prevention, It's no surprise to hear from me, I'm sure, that the threat of fraud is ever present. And in the first half of this year, we have issued 22 alerts to the council, and we have shared generic executive reports to the council with learning from other partner councils. We have delivered 7 specialised training events, and more are planned for Q3. In respect of current fraud investigations, 56 allegations of fraud were received in the first half of the year. Service areas affected are housing, council tax, procurement and parking. 37 cases were under investigation, with 18 in the referral stage. The combined estimated loss for these cases is £242,000. 7 investigations have been closed, with combined losses and savings of just over £20,000. And by way of explanation, a loss is an actual loss caused by the fraud, which can be subject of recovery. The saving is what the council will not pay out over the next 12 months, having identified a fraud and stopped the payments. At the end of the second quarter, the combined figure of £20,000 is comprised of just short of £7,000 in losses and just over £13,000 worth of savings. In addition, SAF's review of 18 council tax fraud stroke errors has identified just over £10,000 in losses. In respect of cases referred to legal for prosecution, 1 case is proceeding to court, and in a second, an alternative option to prosecute was utilised. This was the issuance of a cease and desist notice and the barring from the council's register of the person concerned. 6 investigations for tenancy are also live with the social housing provider in the council's area, and 1 of the property has been recovered so far this year for that provider. In respect to proactive work, teams across the council have and are being supported to upload data for the National Fraud Initiative, and that upload is now complete. Recently received information from the Cabinet Office that the output for this year is expected in 20th December, which is a whole month earlier than it would be usually, which just comes as a bit of shock all around. So work is being realigned, and support will be available as needed to the council from SAFs to deal with these earlier than usual reports coming out. Council's participation in the SAF's Hertfordshire Fraud Hub has seen 800 records for review in the first half of this year. The review continues with a small number of fraud discrepancies identified. SAFs also manages the council tax framework and a new contract has been delivered and is live with the council, and the planned use will be within 2024, or at least start within 2024, that is. Earlier on this year, we participated in a tri-county, multi-agency blue badge education and enforcement campaign. This was to highlight the theft of badges to users and the misuse and inappropriate use of the badge by people who shouldn't be in possession of it. A legacy project from this campaign is the development of a memorandum of understanding between the parties to support prevention and deter the misuse. In respect of the KPIs and the issue with the recording of urgent and high-risk cases, this issue persists and it rests with our software provider, unfortunately. However, all North Herts Council cases were actioned and opened within 1 day. So we are confident we are meeting this KPI, but the case management system just cannot provide the necessary statistics to confirm that's the case. I'm happy to take any questions at this point, Chair.
Thanks so much, Darren, for that update. Are there questions from the committee? I see lights already lighting up. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Darren. You mentioned the case management system and that it's a software issue. What's being done to address this issue of not being able to separate out the urgent cases?
It's to do with being able to identify which cases are urgent or not. And we procured the system last year. We had difficulties with it. Every other functionality is up and running. That one, I'm afraid, will not be. Early part of next year, we'll have conversations with senior officers, all of our partners, and explain the difficulties. And I think that KPI will be varied or removed because of it just cannot be. The case management system will not be able to do it going forward. But as I said, we can see how long it takes us to deal with all cases at the council. And that is all within a day, which is the KPI itself. So it was an added bonus to be able to give some additional flavour and reassurance in the way of some MI for all of our partners. Unfortunately, it's turned out not to be the case. So I think we won't be seeing it next year, but more attention can be paid to how we deal with all cases and that they will dealt with in a day.
Yeah, so it's very impressive and good to hear that they're being dealt with in a timely manner. So the software provider can't provide the functionality that you're looking for. Is that correct?
That's the simple answer. Yes, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much, Darren.
Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you. Just a question on the KPI above that on page 20, the other amber one, which is the amount of work versus the funded 267 days. Why is that amber at this point of the year? It seems vaguely on track if I did my maths.
It's purely, Councillor, because it's not been completed at the end of the year, so it's part way through. So we are ahead of target. You're quite correct in providing those number of days, and that's the simple explanation, because we've got a target number in there that's not yet complete. So at the end of the year, if we continue as we are, it will turn green.
Okay, I just thought that the RAG status
Yes.
would be measured against where we would expect to be now, as opposed to where you think you'd be at the end of the year, or either way. But that's okay. I mean, it's not. The point is, it's not. We shouldn't be concerned about it.
No.
Thank you.
No, not at the moment, Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Coming in on that one, if I might, the shared anti-fraud service comes under my broader remit, and I've made the same challenge to the head of SAFs on that one. And we've talked about different color coding, because I'd quite like to have seen it when I've reviewed the papers to be green, because we are on track. We're not behind a profile, if you want. And I think in future we might see some color coding of maybe orange would be amber, something to be worried about, yellow is incomplete or something, but actually on track. When I first read the papers, it felt the same way, but it is reassuring that we are on track to, even though the profile won't necessarily be even across the year, the team has done really well to be ahead of that projected target.
John.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just picking up a couple of bits in the paper. Can you just expand a little bit for us on paragraph 11 that talked about the significant matter that you described as led to a ban and the case has now been resolved? Just interested in the extent to which you can comment, what else you can tell us about it. And secondly, the memorandum of understanding between these various parties. Can you just expand a little bit on how that moves us forward? What sort of foundation does it lay, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I'll deal with the first one. So in paragraph 11, there are two cases. So the significant matter is a housing matter. It is with legal, and a summons is in the process, I understand, being issued. So at the moment, publicly, wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on any further detail than that. But it is a significant case for the council in a number of different ways, and I'm happy that we can report back to the chair, who can then share some additional material for you. And sorry, Councillor, the second question has completely lost my
just
got out of my head.
And if you can, on what the memorandum of understanding.
Yes, sorry.
Move the agenda forward.
So for those who aren't aware, the blue badge misuse and the theft of blue badges is continually on the increase. It comes as no surprise that in certain parts of the world where we don't where the council is situated not too far away, that parking is at a premium. I mean, it's probably at a premium locally, but further south and to the north, there are areas where it really is of a premium. And blue badges stolen blue badges can raise quite a high price. Now that's an issue all around, because that leads to inability for the people using the blue badges correctly to find a parking place because someone's misusing one. There's a cost implication for the reissuance of those badges. There's a loss of parking revenue, and all of the misuse leads to lots of local issues and resentment. And the legacy of the MOU is to continue what was started over a period of a few weeks in the early summer, to continue onwards for the parties to continue to share information and work together. So whilst we were working with the civil enforcement officers across Hertfordshire, colleagues from Buckinghamshire were working with their civil enforcement officers, as well as other councils and the police as well. So the police are seeing lots of issues with vehicles being broken into and the badges being stolen. So it's a much broader approach than we've ever taken before. The trial, if you like, of that campaign for several weeks in the summer has led to the joined up approach. And so people can share information, local trends, things that they see are happening, areas being targeted. There's the police are utilising neighbourhood watch schemes to circulate information about things where you've got cars broken into, blue badges stolen, for other people to be aware. So it's an ongoing legacy, and it'll have as much life as we can breathe into it, and ensure that at least once a year we do that multi-agency approach again across tri-counties and keep the conversation going, keep it present and keep it relevant, so that we help to make people aware and reduce the fear and the actual crime itself.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the responses. Are any more questions from the committee? Just ask one question. You noted that there's an intention to make better use of data to identify trends. Even at this stage, are there any new emerging trends that you can see that potentially could become more of an issue going forward?
In any particular area, Chair, or across the council in general?
No, well, particularly for the council, but you were just talking there about blue badge. That's one area, but are there anything new potentially coming down the line that you can see, or is it standard things that you've seen before and it's just being aware of those?
There are variations of lots of the standard things. I think the ones that we really, really want people to be aware of are the mandate frauds, which is very much organised crime, attacking not just local authorities, but other small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, with an email encouraging them to change a bank account. These have been received at the council, have been detected, and losses prevented. But that's not going to mean that they're going to stop coming. Because these organised criminal groups are not just national, they're international. Some of them work in concert, some of them work individually, and they will persist because they are nothing but persistent, and it's very easy for them to send out these emails with attempts to get emails changed, bank accounts changed, and money diverted. And it's started to get a lot more complicated. It's not just an email anymore. There's an email chain that can emanate from your own suppliers, because the supplier's email account has been hacked, essentially, taken over by the bad guys, and they are reading the information and are then acting in the sense of they are the supplier, and they can then because the emailer then arrives at local authorities with the previous string of emails and in the genuine address of the email address of the supplier. People are easily taken in by it, and that's one of the alerts that we've circulated this year. So they have absolutely complete confidence at that point. It's a genuine email from a genuine company that they deal with all the time, because they can see all the chat below it, and it then follows on with some social conversation. There is some social engineering that goes to it. They're quite clever in doing that. And then before you know it, someone has changed the bank account, and new invoices are being issued, and the accounts are not the genuine contractor or supplier. And this is highly dangerous, because these individuals are also seeing what's previously gone out. So they're a consent box to see who they've sent emails to, and will then take over that conversation as well. So once they're inside the email system, it's very difficult to A, know they're there, and B, to stop what's going on, other than, which has happened previously at this authority, is to apply the correct policy and procedure, and that's to pick up the telephone or some other method of communication other than the email or the letter or whatever it was that's started the change in bank details, and verify it through a third party. And often we do advise that a third, whoever's dealing with that third party supplier at the council, that makes that telephone call, not someone in the accounts payable. So they can verify and assure what's going on. The threat is getting more complicated, it's getting more dangerous, and that's just one example of several that we're seeing where the threat level has gone up because of the sophistication of the teams targeting councils and other businesses.
Thanks so much. I don't know if I'm reassured or scared a bit, but I am reassured that you and your team are on it. So that's very reassuring. Thank you so much for highlighting that.
Thank you, Chair.
Timely reminder of data security for all of us. Thanks for that. I don't see any other requests to speak. So the recommendation on this item from the anti-fraud update is that the committee notes the progress by officers and the shared anti-fraud service to deliver the anti-fraud plan for the council. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to propose, and I think we should record our thanks to them too. Thank you.
Thank you, and absolutely agree with that. And can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Willoughby. Old school. Can we go to the vote then? Yes, let's do that first. Any debate? Apologies. No. In which case, can we now go to the vote? Thank you.
Chair, the motion's carried.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then to item 7, which is the science progress report for 2024-25, and Chris, would you present? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming Chanel switched on my mic. I was expecting to push the button. Can I just check it's not problematic that I'm not sitting in front of my name board there? I realise I've sat slightly askance, but couple of things, probably 3 or 4 things actually I wanted to raise in my report. One of them on the high priority recommendations. You'll note I promised a verbal update on one of them, with the 2 others having been implemented. And that arrived this morning, and it was somewhat longer than I anticipated. So the estates one at the back of Appendix D, the summary is that good progress is being made, but they wish to have a revised target date of the 1st of March 2025. And instead of trying to read out what's been written, I hope the committee don't mind if I propose to perhaps circulate the update rather than try and read it out to you. But the assurance is that good progress has been made on the estate's high priority recommendation. I transfer away from their email. Right. But the good reassurance is that the one on agency staffing and the one on the houses and multiple occupation are both implemented. So good assurance for the committee. Some things I have to bring to your attention, given that the audit committee ultimately approves the audit plan for the authority. There have been 2 changes to the plan since the last committee. One is the project prioritisation audit, which has been cancelled and replaced by a purchasing cards audit, which has started. And the other one, the Churchgate project assurance, is a change of approach rather than cancellation or deferral. Instead of following an embedded assurance approach as was laid out in the audit plan, being an approach where we would be part of the project over its lifespan, advising as it goes along. We're instead doing a more traditional audit at a specific moment in time, picking up the period since we last audited the project about 12 months ago. Couple of other things I wanted to draw to your attention. I've written quite a lot in there, just feeling a little bit concerned at this time of the year about being behind where I'd anticipate on delivery of the plan. I've outlined a number of reasons for that. You'll notice in Appendix B on the calendar where we have our original proposed start months that a number of audits have been moved into Q3, which just creates a bit of a back-ended delivery of the plan, if you want. It's not uncommon across the entire local government sector and around Hertfordshire, but within our partnership, it does have a bit of a knock-on effect in how resources available. At the moment, I'm confident by the time that we come to do our annual assurance opinion for you early in the new financial year, we'll have delivered enough work to support that opinion. But it does require all those remaining audits in the plan to start and be allowed to complete without sort of too many more cancellations, if that can be helped. So I think I'd probably leave it there and take any questions, if I might.
Thanks so much, Chris. Are there questions from the committee? Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Chris. Just on the verbal update one on page 38, can you just go over again what the outcome is in summary? So essentially, is the risk now mitigated and the actions have been done, or is it not and there is a new date proposed?
So that's exactly it. I think the risk is in the process of being mitigated, is my understanding. So progress has been made in implementing it. It's not yet done. If I just cross-refer to the email again, my impression is that a lot of what's still got to be done is cross-checking to other sort of sources of data and things, which I hope will be outlined when I share this. But looking for a revised date for full implementation on the 1st of March 25. So we're looking 4.5 months hence. But
when did you do the audit? Sorry.
So the audit was done. You're taking me back now. I'm going to say the final audit report was this was issued in Q1, if I remember. So it was an audit that came from last year's audit plan that was finished earlier this year.
So in I appreciate this is not for you to do with the management to deal with, but basically saying it's going to take over a year to find and reconcile a couple of databases about this inventory, which I'm not sure I feel particularly comfortable with in terms of risk appetite on this, if I'm honest, to the councillors. I don't know if we can take some action with the service director or something to get something happening or quicker on this. So it feels like, I mean, it's something you've raised as a high issue and it's over a year before they can actually address it.
I'm wondering if a change of plan, if I attempt to read some of what's here, would that perhaps be helpful. It's not the
I don't know,
long.
Chair. Do we want to go into it now or read it
Yeah.
offline? So,
Yes, we can have a look at it now. But it's a fair point being raised. That's been raised. Yeah, let's look at that now.
So what's written here is that good progress has been made. Master spreadsheet has been populated with core data from existing sources, including finance records. We're now cross-referencing and doing a manual check of data to confirm the correct status of all lettings. Action is therefore ongoing with a revised target date of 1st of March 25. Once accurately captured in Excel form, this will enable us to satisfy the recommendations in the case of alerts for review dates and updating the asset register. A review can then be undertaken to decide if the current property management system is updated or a new system will be more appropriate for the council's needs, and that will then ultimately deliver all the recommendations A to E. The review of systems is also part of the digital transformation project work within the council, and they are undertaking a wider options evaluation for Uniform, which is the current system, to see if they can recreate the components in-house. They've inputted into that so they can map out the processes and functionality it provides and to get an idea of what would need to be built. And I think that second half moves into the recommendation, which is due for implementation in December, and which isn't in this report. There were 2 high priority recommendations out of this particular report. I'm not sure if that's muddied the water or added clarity. Not being familiar with the
I guess
detail of what
my challenge back to
Yeah.
the I guess the administration is, are we actually putting enough attention on getting this addressed quickly enough? I don't know how we raise that with whom. Is that Ian or don't know who would who would pick that up?
It's not directly my team, but I will certainly address that with the relevant service director and we'll come to conclusion around what should be happening and how quickly. The team is now broadly fully staffed, which is a big change from where it was back when the audit took place. So we are moving in the right direction. I think they're probably doing themselves down a little bit in terms of how much progress they've made. I think they're trying to do it so everything get perfectly in place. I think they're probably most of the way there to getting most of it mostly in place. But I will get a fuller answer in terms of what the residual risks are where we are now, compared to where they'll be when we've completed everything and compared to where they are when we started it and when the audit took place. Because I think probably the risks are now a lot lower. There's not zero yet, but probably at a tolerable level as we stand at the moment. But I would want to confirm that to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? John Cannon.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question on paragraph 2.8. An audit has been dropped on project prioritisation, replaced with one on purchasing cards. Very different topics. Please can you tell us a little bit more about why the switch, and is the assurance going to be deeper because of it, please?
I will start an answer, and when Ian wants to start the answer and I come in, do you know what? I'll ask Ian to
Be easier if I provide a direct response. Both of those audits fall into sort of my general area, so I can respond on both of them. So I think on purchasing cards, we've away from that, so we are slightly higher risk. We've seen, well, we are about to look at a new purchasing card system, which is going to be more efficient in terms of process for the users. And as part of that, gives a chance to look at all the controls we've got in place. So it seems a really good time to do an audit of it to make sure that the controls we're going to take on board in the new system will be as good as they can be. We've also found, anecdotally, some issues with managers doing reviews of transactions in time, and also wants to make sure that the purchasing cards being used correctly. I'm not saying it's all being used fraudulently, but potentially just to make sure they're being fully used in time in line with our policies. And also, I think the third factor is that across other audit partners in SIAS, there have been some issues found with purchasing cards. So always good to learn from other people in terms of making sure your controls are there too. So that's the reason why purchasing cards seems quite a high highest priority to get something work done on, both make sure it's timely and the relative importance of it. In terms of project prioritization, that was put in there back, obviously, when we set the audit plan back in March. At that time, we'd just sort of gone through the process about looking at our projects and accounts delivery plan and sort of streaming that down, which we managed to do. And we thought might be sort of more kind of turbulence in terms of what that might lead to in terms of new projects being added back in and things like that, but actually we've added nothing new back in. So that provides some reassurance, probably wasn't necessary from that perspective. And also we knew the peer review was coming up, and our peer review has looked at that sort of broad area. Obviously that report on that will come back at a later date. So that provides some assurance too that there was another process to look at that too. So in terms of looking at kind of that overall mapping of assurance, we felt that purchasing card was getting no assurance from elsewhere, but that was, so hence the switch.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Don't see any requests. So the recommendations at the moment are that the committee notes the SIRES progress report for the period 2, 25th October 2024, the implementation status of the reported high priority recommendations, and committee notes the planned amendments to the 24-25 annual audit plan. Can I have a proposer for that? Is that Councillor?
Yes, propose.
Yeah, no, thank you. Can I have a seconder? And Councillor Lastwas, thank you. Debate on that. Any debate? No. Just look. I was seeing your hand moving. I didn't know if that's coming. Okay. In which case, can we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 8. This is the statement of accounts for 2022-23 and 23-24. Colleagues would have noted that they would have received an email early this morning noting that there is an addendum to that. We've received the completion report from Ernst & Young. I know that was pretty late in the day for the committee, and the first question is, have members of the committee had a chance to review that addendum document? Or if you haven't as of yet, would you like a break for a short period now in order to glance at that document if you've not had a chance to look at it? So have all the members of the committee had a chance to review those additional documents is the question. And has anyone who does not want to make themselves known? It's not a problem, it's just give you a chance to have a look at it. So I'll take everyone's had a chance to look at it. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. In which case, is everyone happy to proceed? Yeah, we don't need a break. Amazing. In which case, item 8, the statement of accounts for 2022-23 and 23-24. Ian Cooper to present the report and the supplement, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and probably break this in sort of maybe 3 parts, this report, because there's obviously quite a lot in there. So I'll start off with the context and where we've got to before the addendum report. I'll then ask Debbie Hanson from Ernst & Young to take you through the completion report. She will provide kind of quite a thorough introduction to that and tell you what the findings are from that. And then after we've covered that, we'll look at next steps for 22-23, and then we'll have a brief conversation about 23-24 and the audits happening from KPMG. And Jessica from KPMG will give us an update about where they are with that audit. So quite a lot to fit in, and I'll try and start now. First thing to note, just on the executive summary, 3rd paragraph of that executive summary, there were some date errors in there. So in that last sentence, where it says this is in advance the audit backstop for, that should read 23-24 of 28th February 2025, not 2024-25. And similarly, in the next paragraph, it should also say 23-24 as well. So Moving into the report itself, so the background sets out why we are where we are. So you've seen this report, seen some of this report before in terms of audit backstops. This all relates to the various issues that hit the audit sector and local government sector in terms of statement of accounts. There were already issues prior to COVID. COVID made it worse in terms of the delays got worse, and also issues with the private sector and public sector in terms of governance failures, accounting failures, leading to strengthening of the requirements in order to do more work. So all that led to kind of the perfect storm of not enough auditors to do the work that's required, and therefore once you're in a backlog situation, it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's been identified for quite some time. Action was needed, although back in 2019, so Tony Redmond carried out his review. That's pre-COVID. So yeah, it has been a known issue for a long time, and therefore the Conservative government initially worked with across the sector and with kind of various standard setting bodies within the sector to look at ways to solve that. The idea being that we'd have some backstop dates. Those backstop dates would mean if the audit work on the relevant accounting years had not been completed by those dates, the auditor was issued a disclaimed opinion, which means no fault of the authority or the auditors, means they haven't had time to do the work on it, and they're saying we haven't had time to do the work on it, so don't place reliance on the bits we're disclaiming, but please approve the accounts anyway. All that review to over time you get back on track rather than potentially forever being behind in terms of audit that's not taking place. Initial plans on dates were sort of somewhat stymied by the calling of the general election, which meant the legislation didn't pass. So it was then brought back in by the Labour government, and that is now has now gone through some of the process, still a bit more of the process to go in terms of the legislation, and then that will be in place, and then these backstop dates will be adhered to and become law. So paragraph 8.2 on page 43 of the pack sets out the various backstop dates. You've also got an appendix A of the report pack, which provides the kind of the simple version of what all this means in terms of opinions, which is kind of a really helpful guide in terms of how to sort of interpret all of it. Where we had expected to be at this stage was that we would still be waiting for Ernst & Young's completion report, which would mean that at this meeting we would look at the accounts themselves, which are attached to Appendix B, and that would be about it. And then we delegate everything else to the chair of the committee. We are in the fortunate position that Ernst & Young managed to get that completion report done and issued. Unfortunately, that was this morning. We finally got that kind of all resolved, but you know, we do our best. So we have published that on the agenda, and thankful that you've all found time to look at that. So I will now hand over to Debbie, if that's okay, Chair, to take you through that completion report and her sort of takings from that. And if there's anything else to add to that, I'll do that after Debbie's done so.
Yeah, please. Debbie wants to join her part of the report.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ian. I think Ian's given a very good overview in terms of the position we're in and what the report does. As members haven't had very long to review it, I will take you through it in a little bit more detail, but I think we have discussed the overall position on the audit and the national context of the local audit reset and the backstop dates at previous meetings. So hopefully members of the committee are familiar with that. So in summary, this is probably quite an unusual report because normally we'd bring to you an audit plan, and then we'd bring you an IC 260 report, and then we'd issue with an annual auditor's annual letter, which would include all of our reporting on the audit of financial statements and our value for money work. In effect, what you're getting with this completion report is a composite report that includes all of that. We had previously reported to this committee the interim findings from our value for money work back in June. And so, in effect, the key messages from that report are also pulled into this report, but we are not repeating all of the detail that was in that within this report. So that does help shorten it a little bit. The reason we're including in the report things such as materiality and risks is that under the auditing standards requirements, even if we're issuing a disclaimer opinion, there are still some basic procedures that we need to undertake. Some of those procedures include things such as inquiries of management and those charged with governance regarding are there any non-compliance with laws and regulations, any significant frauds we should be aware of, or any other issues. We also do some basic checks on the accounts, such as checking the opening balances in the 22-23 accounts back to the audited 21-22 financial statements, checking that the accounts cast and are internally consistent, and also checking them against the SIP for disclosure checklist. So fairly basic procedures, but they are requirements for us to be able to actually then issue our disclaimed opinion. So the report hopefully it sets out some context as well as the local scenario, and hopefully makes it clear that there were no specific issues at North Herts that resulted in the position whereby we were not able to schedule in a 22-23 audit. It is a local system issue, an issue with capacity within the system as a whole. So what the report then takes you through is in a bit more detail. So section 2 of the report on page 17 just highlights to you the materiality levels that we would have set had we been undertaking the audit. And we've applied those levels when we found any issues within the financial statements based on those basic procedures as well. It also highlights the risks that we would have included a plan had we issued one. And those risks, as you'll see, are very similar to the risks in the previous year. So there's nothing there that would be out of the ordinary in terms of any risk that we'd be expecting to see. So it's the normal management override risk that we'd see. It's the normal risk of incorrect capitalisation of revenue spend, valuation of investment properties, other land and buildings, and then pension liability valuations. So those are the risks that you'd expect to see, and probably very similar to the risks you'll see in 23-24 as well. We're also required to confirm to you our independence, so we do that within the report. And then we move on to talk about the key findings from the work that we've undertaken. There's no significant issues that we identified in relation to our value for money work. The only issues we did find was some differences when we did our basic procedures in the financial statements, and we've included details of those on page 23. We have flagged those with management, and management have agreed to amend for all those differences in the 22-23 financial statements before they are actually approved and signed off. So I don't know if members want any further on details on those. I'm sure Ian will be happy to provide a bit more comment. There were either internal consistencies or issues where the opening balances in the current year didn't agree to the audited financial statements, but most of the differences, with the exception of one in a note, were not material, but are being corrected. That's probably mainly the main things I wanted to draw to your attention. You members will probably be interested to see the format of the audit report, which is on page 27. So that is a draft of the audit opinion that we will be issuing. That has been through our internal processes in terms of review, so we're not really expecting any changes to that in terms of the final version that we issue. So as members will see, it's probably a bit shorter than the normal report that we issue. It includes the value for money section, but makes it clear up front that there's a disclaimer of the opinion and the basis for that disclaimer. So I'm very happy to take any questions or comments on the report, but I'm very pleased that we've actually managed to get to this committee, because now we should be in a position that once 2 further processes that are outside of our control have occurred, we'll be in a position to issue our opinion on the financial statements as well as the certificates. We're hoping to be able to do that at some point after the 22nd of November, because at that point the updated NAO code, which enables us to issue the disclaimer, will have been issued, and hopefully the NAO will also have confirmed that it does not want any further procedures in relation to WGA, which means that we can also issue our certificate. So I think if we get everything lined up after this committee, we'll be in a really good place once those things happen to just issue the audit opinion.
Thank you, Debbie, for your update on that. Ian, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate that as a committee, you duty place a degree of reliance on the work by the external auditors in relation to statement accounts, and that you are being asked to approve the statement accounts without that kind of view from audit, because it is a disclaimed opinion. I appreciate it's somewhat puts you in a difficult position, but it is your role as committee to approve those statement accounts, albeit that in this instance you are delegating that to the chair of the committee, because as Debbie has set out, there's still things we need to do to get to the point where we can approve the accounts. Although the expectation fully is that they will be as per presented in the appendix B, but with those adjustments that there's been highlighted in that report. So we'll make those adjustments, and then those will be the version that will be have all the kind of various bits added to it in terms of all the statements to be formally approved by the chair of the committee and that delegation. I will sort of confirm that, as set out in the report, we have got an approved annual governance statement, which has to be published and approved, has to be approved before statement of accounts and then published alongside the statement of accounts. And I would just like to propose a slight change to recommendation 2.6, in that you have all confirmed that you have had a chance to read the addendum report and the appendix, and therefore I'd like to propose that recommendation 2.6 now reads that the committee notes the completion report and the process that will be followed for the approval of the 22-23 accounts as detailed in paragraph 8.13 of the supplements. So just add that bit, notes the completion report to that, which then saves us having to go out by email to get you to approve that you've seen it, which seems a lot simpler process given you how we are where we are now. So that is where I think we are on the 22-23 accounts. Probably worth now pausing for any questions on that position before we move on to looking at 23-24.
Any questions from the committee?
Yes, thank you, Debbie, for that very clear and concise overview. I just wanted, in respect of page 23, where you raised some audit differences, I just wanted to ask Ian if he could explain the discrepancy that you had identified, the long-term investment, the difference between 0 and 2 million seems quite a big one, and note I think that's note 20 and note 39 where there's a difference. If you could just explain the reason behind that and what's being done to address it. Thank you.
In relation to the 2 million, when you identify that number been amalgamated to another number, so the overall numbers worked in that note, but the two separate numbers weren't casting back to what's in the balance sheet. So therefore, by separating the numbers back out again, it all matches back again. So that hopefully assures you that the numbers were all correct fundamentally. And the pensions one was in another note to the accounts, and that was just a complete error, I'm afraid, in terms of we put the wrong number. It was, everything else added up into that number, but by adding that number to be correct, then it will then happen again properly. So it was an error, put the wrong number in there when copying it across, but now will be corrected.
Thank you.
John Can.
Thanks, Chair. A question mainly on the original paper, not the supplement, please. Just thinking back to the prior year accounts where there were some year-end adjustments identified through the audit process. I think things like property and investment classifications. Is there any assurance we have that those underlying root causes for those adjustments have been addressed and they wouldn't repeat in this next year's set of accounts? And the second part of that question, please, is just relating to the reclassification of the Churchgate development. Is there a financial impact that materially affects the accounts, please?
So in response to your first question, when we did that review in relation to the 21-22 accounts, we did fully review every single item on the asset register that goes into the balance sheet to make sure there were no more duplications, because that was the issue we had. Essentially, items of assets that were duplicated. Did a full review then. We're still using the same data with those duplicates removed. So yes, I'm sure I can hopefully give you assurance that there's no additional issues being created by that. When we move into our new finance system, which we're implementing at the moment, which doesn't affect these accounts, but will affect sort of 2 years later accounts, we'll have a new asset register completely, and then we'll have even more assurance. But I'm confident there are no errors in the numbers that presented to you here. And in answer to your second question, which I'm just trying to remember what it was,
Reclassifications.
No issue at all, in terms of all we did was swap the number from one category to another. So it just swaps from an investment property to property, plant and equipment, used the same valuation basis. So yeah, just move the number around the balance sheet for no difference at all, either in
Thank you.
accounting terms or real terms.
trust that moving all these numbers around balance sheets is readily and it's all accurate for the moment. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, same ilk on the narrative report. I think it's very helpful. Page 71 for 22-23. My eye was drawn, given the forward-looking discussions around MTFS and budgets, to the savings achieved historically table over the last decade. I would note the 22-23 figure in there is essentially we benefited from interest rates as opposed to the council did something to save money. And the rest of the years are extremely small numbers, which is for us to reflect on, except 2018, 2019 was 2.9, significantly bigger than the other years. Do you know what was driving that particularly good savings year?
That was the award of the new waste contract in 2018 and the implementation of garden waste charging, both of which had a positive financial effect for the authority.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on 22-23? No. Ian, did you have anything else you want to add? Moving on to 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in relation to 23-24, KPMG have started their work on the audit of those accounts. So if I can ask Chair for you to ask Jessica to give an update on where they are.
Yes, absolutely. So can I invite Jessica to provide us an update where KPMG is at this moment?
Thank you, Chair. So members of the committee will recall that we brought our audit plan for the 23-24 audit to the last committee meeting, and that was approved by the committee. So we have now progressed our year-end audit procedures, and we are on track to deliver an opinion ahead of the backstop date of the 28th of February 2025. So we believe we are on track to issue an opinion for that date. One thing to be aware of for the committee members is that that opinion will still be a disclaimed opinion for the 23-24 year-end accounts. However, it will be disclaimed over a smaller bucket of balances within the accounts compared to the previous 22-23 accounts that you've just been talking about. In terms of our 23-24 audit, we will have performed audit procedures in relation to the council's income, expenditure and staff cost balances. And in terms of the balance sheet, we will have undertaken audit procedures in respect of the pension numbers and the land and buildings valuation numbers, as those are the areas where we have our significant risks. Some of the reason for the disclaimed opinion is due to the fact that the opening balances numbers won't have been audited in the previous year, and therefore we're unable to gain assurance over those starting numbers to be able to audit the closing numbers. We believe as part of the getting the sector back on track, we expect there to be a couple of years of disclaimed opinions, and as I said, that disclaimer gets smaller and smaller each year as the impact of the opening balances work gets smaller and smaller relatively to the new numbers. That is a sector-wide point and won't be North Hart specific. In terms of our value for money work, we are well progressed with our work there. We are at the point of coming to the initial conclusions of our work, and we'll be chatting that through with Ian in the next few weeks before bringing the results to the committee. So happy to take any questions there in relation to 23-24.
Thanks so much for that, Jessica. Any questions from the committee for Jessica and KPMG? No, I don't see any requests at this point in time. So unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add, I'll read out the recommendations. So we've got a few, so bear with me. So 2.1, that the committee note the 22-23 annual statement of accounts as set out in Appendix B. 2.2, that the committee delegate to the chair of the committee the final approval of the 22-23 annual statement of accounts. This will include confirming that the chair of the committee can sign the statement of accounts to confirm that they have been approved by the committee. 2.3, that the committee note that the annual governance statement for 22-23 was approved by the committee in September 2023, and that nothing has been identified since that date that would require a change to that annual governance statement. 2.4, that the committee note the progress made in the audit of the 23-24 annual statement of accounts. 2.5, that the committee note the additional audit fees that have been notified by KPMG in relation to ISA 315R of £11,597. And that will be subject to approval by the PSAA. And then we have the additional recommendation, which has been included in your supplementary papers. So 2.6, that the committee notes the completion report, the process that we followed for the approval of the 22-23 accounts, as detailed in paragraph 8.13 of the supplement. And 2.7, that the committee formally thanks Ernst & Young for their work and support of this committee over the last 8 years. Can I have a proposer for those, please? Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to propose that.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Willoughby. Thank you. Any debate? No debate. In which case, can I just say thank you at this juncture to Ernst & Young and our audit partner, Debbie Hanson, for their work over the last 8 years in support of this committee. I'm sure it's well appreciated by all of us and former members of this committee overall.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Can we go to the vote then, please?
Chair, the motion's carried.
Thank you. In which case, shall we keep moving forward and on to item 9 of the agenda, the Code for Statutory Officers, Head of Paid Service, Section 151, and Monitoring Officers. Ian, keep it to present.
This report is brought to you as a committee that is charged basically with governance and making sure the council has good governance. So it felt appropriate to bring the report to you. It also went to Standards Committee as well for their comments too. So obviously you welcome your comments on it too. What it covers is what is known as our statutory officers, which as set out in 7.3 are the Managing Director, the Chief Finance Officer and the Monitoring Officer. In terms of Chief Finance Officer, that's myself as Service Director of Resources, Monitoring Officer is Service Director for Legal and Community. And the clues in the title, they are statutory officers because they are required by statute. The authority has those officers. They are the key officers ensuring that the council is run with good governance, and therefore they're what's known as the golden triangle. And it's important that there are sort of measures in place to make sure they can operate effectively and they're listened to. So the code, as set out in the document, sort of sets out what needs to happen to achieve that. And that includes things like, so making sure they listen to when they say something, and also making sure they've got the appropriate resources to undertake a role, and also sort of the officers themselves, kind of making sure they kind of talk to each other and share information and all those kind of things. So the report covers what the code says. We feel that generally we've got everything in place to achieve that, but obviously we'd like the continued support of the council in achieving that as statutory officers. So yeah, the report is with you to kind of ask any questions and yeah, any comments you wish to make on it.
Thanks so much, Ian. I should just apologise, forgot to thank KPMG on the last item on the way up there as well. So apologies for that to our colleagues online. Any questions for Ian on the Code for Statutory Officers? Councillor Brown.
It wasn't really a question. It was, I think this code of practice on good governance is extremely good and very sensible, and sort of fits with the Nolan principles, and that the 7 areas it outlines seem to make absolute sense to me. And I note in 7.6 that we could formally adopt the code should we wish. It's already been endorsed by the LLG, the Solus, and SIPFA. So it seems I would like to propose that we do formally adopt it. I don't know whether this is the right time to do that. But so as I said, it's not really a question. Can we add that into the recommendations? And then there's another one about circulating it. That seems eminently sensible as well under 7.7. Do we add those to the can we add those to the recommendations? Is that appropriate now? Or should that be for later?
Ian, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it's certainly appropriate. The committee can recommend that it's circulated widely. That would seem completely within the realms of the committee, and something with statutory officer support as well. So something we can certainly enact. In terms of formally adopting it, I admit that is something I should check before the meeting in terms of who would actually formally adopt it, which committee could formally adopt it, or how we would do it. I have to take that away. We can make a recommendation to the committee that you would like to see us formally adopt it, and then I can look into who decision maker is, and actually whether we do formally adopt it or not, and then how we go about that. But let me take that with the legal team, how we do that. But certainly welcome the principle of adopting it.
Yeah, well, I'd like to propose that we do that then. Thank you.
Perhaps you could also propose that again during debate, and we can get the comments from the other members of the committee as well. But seems a sensible suggestion. We'll need to make a recommendation for it. Other questions? Councillor Ward.
Thank you. Just on item 8.3, which is the role of deputies, and it's strongly encouraged that we have deputies for all the statutory officers. So my question is, do we, and are they then all essentially both bound by this to the same degree in case they need to step in and act as the officers themselves, and have they had the suitable training so that they could fulfill those roles in as necessary?
So yes, both myself as Section 155 officer has a deputy who does a lot of the work on the accounts and all the kind of stuff that you see that happens to make everything work in the background. And equally Jeanette has a deputy, is Isabel in the legal team, who acts as her deputy. They both are invited to our statutory officers group meetings, and they attend those. There is, I think, always work to do in terms of training both the statutory officers ourselves and also our deputies. So I think there's still ongoing work there to make sure that we continue to keep up our training in that respect. In terms of managing director, it's a bit more vague in terms of each of the service directors will deputise for the managing director when he's on leave or away. So they are in effect acting in that basis during that period, albeit it's unlikely in most events that the relevant parts of the managing director role would be needed on a short-term basis in relation to the act that sort of sets that statutory post. So there would be a need in a longer-term absence to think about how that would be applied to make sure that worked in a longer-term absence were that to arise. But that could be achieved through basically kind of, I guess, a more formal kind of delegation to maybe a single officer if that was to arise. But hopefully he stays in good health and stays with us so that we don't need to consider that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, if you want to step in, just me.
Sorry, I'm just checking the no one member questions before I take the opportunity to say something. I think another important thing for the committee to note, particularly in section 4, which is acting effectively, that there's several references to internal audit and external audit, which is something that our sector has strongly supported, and the way that we can help the statutory officers carry out their duties, but equally how they support internal and external audit as key assurance providers to the authority. And I raise that partly because the current change in the internal audit standards sort of charged the audit committee not only with looking after things like governance, but supporting the work of internal and external audits. So I just wanted to point out the joined up nature of all these codes and how statutory officers support us and we support them. But we're very pleased as internal auditors to see that there's reference to our work and how we can support statutory officers.
John Cameron.
Thank you. Yes, I agree on the face of it. It all makes very good sense. Devil's advocate question, is there any reason not to adopt it? It's curious that a code of practice is open to being adopted. Usually it's a code of practice that applies. So it's a quirk that I noticed. And on that basis, I wondered, do we have a view on how the administration stacks up against it so far? Would it pose new commitments for North Herts that would be a stretch?
I think it strengthens what we've got in place already. So we've got the kind of foundations there across all that's required in there. We had already considered things like engaging with our internal and external audit colleagues more directly for our statutory officers, and quite recently we had our first meeting where we invited them both along to our statutory officers meeting. We won't do it every time, but we'll do it on a kind of regularish basis to make sure they kind of have that input. It does put, I guess, in terms of the kind of the deputy point and the training point, it does make that clearer about the expectations there. So obviously more a role for myself and Jeanette and our deputies in sort of keeping ourselves fully trained and keeping ourselves up to speed what's going on in the organisation. So short answer, there are bits across there that we're all doing it all, but we could always do more. And I guess having the code of conduct adopted means we kind of commit to doing that a bit more.
Thank you.
Councillor
It
Brown.
was just a follow-up to Councillor Ward's question, which I thought was a very good one around the deputies. Given the current arrangement where each of the service directors deputises for the head of paid service, that would include the Section 157 officer and the monitoring officer, so the two other statutory officers. So would you effectively, I mean, obviously I can see it would only be an issue if there was a long-term absence, but would you effectively be doing those two roles? Because presumably that's not allowed. You can't have two people doing one person doing two of these roles. Is that correct?
Not quite. It's half correct. So Jeanette as monitoring officer and service director for legal and community does not deputise for Anthony at any point, because the monitoring officer cannot be the head of paid service.
Right.
The chief finance officer can be head of paid service, so you can have one person doing two roles, and I do deputise for Anthony on occasions, and therefore that is allowed, and I do that, and that could happen on an ongoing basis, and there are projects where that does happen. So we make sure we comply with the law both on temporary measures and on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear.
Don't see any other requests to speak. I was going to move to the recommendation, but I'm mindful that we wanted to have a discussion on an added recommendation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the recommendation as proposed now and ask for the proposed and second on that. And then during the debate, if you want to introduce another recommendation, we can then consider that as, if that works.
So,
oh, sorry, I didn't say.
no, that's right. I
Councillor
was going to say, we propose the amendment in the debate and then vote on it. Is that how we do it?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
suggesting. So I'm going to put the recommendation to you now, have a proposer for that, and then go to debate, and then you can propose the amendment there. Yeah. Is that okay? Okay. So the recommendation is that the Finance Audit Risk Committee notes the content of the report and Appendix A and make any suggestions on future actions, particularly reference to 7.6 and 7.7 of this report. Can I have a proposer, Councillor Brown?
So I'm happy to propose that recommendation, and then I would like to add that we circulate the code to all employees and members as as suggested under 7.7. And then thirdly, I need to get this right, that we recommend that council should look to formally adopt the code by whatever means is the, I don't know, maybe one of the officers can word that, Ian can word that for me, but why, by whatever, look at formally adopting it and how we go about doing that.
2 additional recommendations. Yeah, okay. Can I have a seconder for those then?
Not for a second, but I propose some wording.
Oh. Well, let me take those one at a time then. So the
Okay.
first one was the additional recommendation was circulate the code as proposed under 7.7. Yeah, that was
Yeah, that's straightforward.
so you will propose that?
Yeah, I'll propose that.
Councillor Brown. And can I have a seconder for that recommendation?
Happy to second, Chair.
And then the second additional proposal, so there's now a third one. Could you remind us?
I think I need Ian to give me the wording for that one.
I would say let's go with that the committee supports that the council formally adopts the code, which has been endorsed by LLG.
Yeah.
Solid.
Okay.
And
So I will propose that as stated.
Yeah. So the now third recommendation is the committee supports that council formally adopts the code as proposed. And Councillor Brown, I'll take it as given that you propose it. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Griffiths? Yes, thank you. Can I have any debate on all 3 of those recommendations? Councillor Wright Mason.
No debate, just to say I think it's, yeah, I concur and think it's a great
Thank you. Any other comments or debate? No. So just to confirm, we've got the recommendation for that Finance Audit Risk Committee notes the content of the report and Appendix A and make any suggestions on future actions, particularly reference 7.6, 7.7 of this report. We'd also add first additional recommendation that we circulate this code as proposed under 7.7, and the second additional recommendation, so now the third, is that the committee supports the council formally adopts the code as proposed. Can we go to the vote on those, please?
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you, everyone, for those. That brings us to our final item, item 10, and that's to discuss possible agenda items for future meetings. Does anyone want to make any suggestions or any thoughts on things that we can incorporate into future meetings? I understand we may have some jam-packed ones coming up anyway, so you might not want to add additional agenda items, but who knows? Additional training or things you might prefer to hear about before meetings as well? Councillor Ward?
Yeah, just one question. Focus on, I think we talked about it a couple of meetings ago, focus on the risk register, but the mitigations against the risks as well. Have we got that on the forward agenda at some point already?
Yeah, so the next meeting you'll have your half-yearly review on risk. So as part of that, we will look at revising that as part of that report. I know I've also promised training on risk for quite a few meetings now. It keeps getting bumped by other things that seem more pressing. But my plan is that before the next meeting, the training session, if you're able to make it, will be on risk and how we do risk management here, and risk mitigations and those kind of things. So we'll do a bit of training beforehand and then we'll code in the report. Obviously, you've still got more questions after we present the report to you. We can then look at the following meeting, what we can do to kind of address those and in more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty helpful if we actually get that training done as soon as possible, potentially. Anyone else have any ideas, thoughts, comments? No. Brilliant. Well, as Councillor Nolan alluded to previously, you're more than welcome to ponder on it. Let us know, let Ian know, and we'll try and make it happen as soon as possible. I think we'll all benefit from additional training on different aspects that we're all looking at here. Brilliant. In which case, that's brought us to the end of our proceedings for the evening and brought us to the end of my first time in the chair of any committee. So thank you, colleagues, for a very collegiate evening. Close the meeting for today, and our next meeting is in the new year on January 8, 2025. So that wraps us up for this year. So you get back a little bit more of your Wednesday. Good evening, everyone. Thank you.